although I'd like to as well say some words about myself. So my name is Tomasz Poszetek. I know that my last name is really difficult, and I actually just met only a couple of people in the United States who were actually having Polish roots, and they were able to pronounce it correctly. But don't worry, I don't really mind. It's all fine. So it's true that I'm working with Power Automate for years already, and like I started to work with that just after it left the private preview, because back then Power Automate was, or Microsoft Flow back then, was hitting the mainstream. I wasn't yet an MVP, so I didn't have an early access. But then once I learned it is in public preview, I started to onboard myself. And before I started to work with Power Automate, I was working with lots of other tools around process automation. And well, indeed, process automation is something that I'm working with during my everyday job. Before then, I was working with Nintex, with as well Polish platform called Webcon. I was working with SharePoint Designer a lot and building workflows on the SharePoint. And as said, once Automate appeared on the landscape of Microsoft tools, I just onboarded. So today I will be talking about approvals deep dive, and I had quite a struggle when I was preparing this session, because I just couldn't answer myself whether you would like to learn like those more advanced scenarios around approvals, or whether should I go from the basics and then go into the details of how to use Dataverse to leverage approvals to even a next level. And then I decided to simply just do a very brief intro about approvals for those of you who might not know everything around them. And then I'll focus on those really cool scenarios that we can do around approvals using Dataverse, in environment that the approvals are running. So if you'd like to get like more information about what I will be now talking about, so like if you feel not complete with the knowledge you will get today, then I highly encourage you to go to my YouTube channel. So this the one here, the youtube.com/Tomasz Poszetek, where I already have a couple of videos around the approvals deep dive. So there you can learn lots of what I will be talking about today. All right. So I don't have the full day, so I will just go through the slides. First, the most important thing when speaking about approvals is to understand that approvals are actually, maybe this slide for the first round, that approvals are environment related. So you can't really create, there is no like out-of-box interface where you can see all the approvals that are being assigned to you across all the environments. You need to, unfortunately, switch through environments, through action items, or through Microsoft Teams approvals to see what tasks you are assigned. And this is as well important because all those tasks that are created are always stored within Dataverse tables. And and as said, in that specific environment where they were created. And so when speaking about the tables in Dataverse, I put here like four. There are 5 tables, but the table called user is used across anything that happens in Dataverse. But I just put here 4 tables. There are 3 more which are handling some information about the model which is used in approval. But they are actually not really taking part in this approval process in terms of its data being updated across or during the approval process. So first of all, the most important table is called approval, and this is like the approvals header. So here, once you access this table in Dataverse, you will find such information like who created the approval, what is its title, what is its description, when it was created, if the tasks can be reassigned, and if the notifications should be sent. And also, when approval is completed, so like approved, cancelled, rejected, or whatever, here you will also be able to find the result. So what was the outcome of the approval? Now, the approval request is a table that is populated with every single task generated during the approval. So if you create an approval process where you assign tasks to like 5 users, then in approval request, you will have 5 records, each corresponding to a single task generated in that approval process. So here you will find information like what is to whom that specific task is assigned and whether it is still active or inactive. And for example, if it was reassigned and then to what task it was reassigned. Now, approval response is the table that gotcha. It is storing information about the outcomes of approval. So every time a single task is completed, then a new entry is created in approval response that holds information about the outcome of approval and possible comments if they were provided. And lastly, the very cool table, which I was underestimating for a very long time, that is called flow approval, because I didn't really understand its purpose. And this table is holding just some general information about approval, like only an ID of the approval process generated here, but also it is crucial when speaking about all those approval processes that are waiting for approvals. And then in this table, every process that is waiting for approval is creating an entry that contains a URL to a flow, to a logic flow, logic app actually, that has to be called to resume the flow. And I will show you how it works once we go into the details of the approvals. But this table is really, really, really cool. So basically, when speaking about the tasks, how can we assign them? 3 ways are possible as of today. Well, obviously, it can be done through Power Automate tasks, flows, sorry, and through Microsoft Teams, like in a chat, in approvals. Possibly there will be like new or more ways to assign the task directly within a Teams. One important information about the Teams, however, is that, as you possibly know, every environment, or sorry, every team in Microsoft Teams that has anything provisioned in Dataverse for Teams is creating its own dedicated environment. So the tasks that are being assigned within a team are actually stored within that specific Dataverse for Teams environment where the task was created. So that is an important thing to know. Now, when speaking about the Power Automate, we have like 3 actions only to help us with the task. So we can create an approval, then we can wait for approval, or we can create and wait for approval at once. What is important is that once we create an approval, it will be waiting only up to 30 days for the responses. So if users are not able to answer to those tasks within the 30 days, then after 30 days, action is going to be timed out and the whole workflow will appear in the workflow's history as failed. Now, once we decide to, okay, and then, sorry, and then where to find them, right? So we can find, of course, approvals under the action items in the Power Automate portal, or when we navigate to Microsoft Teams, we need to open this new application called Approvals. So that's the one here that I have on the screenshot. And then you can see here again the approvals for the specific environment. So here you have this as well picker or the switcher, whatever selector, where you can when you can choose tasks from which environment you would like to see. All right. Now, once we decide to use Power Automate approvals, then we as well have 4 types of approvals, and these 4 types have like every of these type has its own dedicated model that is being stored along in approval table in Dataverse. So this information is also recorded. So first we can approve reject to either use a task that is only waiting for approve or reject outcomes, and we can wait for the first response only, or we can wait for all responders. And then we have the same thing for custom responses. So there we can define one or more custom outcomes like dislike, whatever, or yes, no, I don't know, or whatever you need in your business logic. And then again, there you can either wait for the first response or wait for all responses. Now, what is important around these types of approvals is that if you choose to use the approve reject model and to approve reject everyone must approve model, then after first rejection, workflow is completed. So in that model, even if you assign the workflow, even if you assign the task to like 10 users, but second is going to answers reject, then the whole approval process is terminated ad hoc or immediately. In terms of custom responses, you need to wait, or the workflow needs to wait for all the responses. So once you assign it to 10 assignees, then it will be waiting until these 10 users will actually respond to their tasks. Right. There is as well a way to extend tasks to teams. So once you assign a workflow, once you create a Power Automate workflow, which is assigning a task, then you can as well use this action that is called post adaptive card in chat or channel. You can't use the action that is called post an adaptive card in a chat or a channel and wait for the response, because that action doesn't cooperate with with approvals adaptive card for some reason. For the purpose of this scenario, you need to use that action that is not waiting for the response, although it does wait. Magically, it does wait. And nevertheless, once you use the action create an approval, and then you can just put some logic between creating an approval and waiting for the approval. And one of those actions you can put between these two is to post an adaptive card to a chat or channel. And so in this scenario, you can post the dynamic outcome generated by action create an approval, which is simply the team's adaptive card, to a specific conversation with a specific user. And in such a scenario, user can either respond to the task from action items in Power Automate, or they can go into their private chat, the conversation with Microsoft Flow for Power Automate bot, and answer to the task through the adaptive card. So these two ways are as well possible. Also, what I mentioned in Microsoft Teams, there is like a new way of working with approvals, because you can either just use the out of box approvals with a basic request type, or you can simply just use the approve reject outcomes, and you can use custom outcomes as well. Or what is as well cool is that you can use the templates, and templates allows you to create your own form for the approval. It's not using adaptive card, unfortunately. It's using Microsoft Forms in the background. So all these responses for these templates are actually being stored at forms.microsoft.com, not in Dataverse. I mean, not in like along approvals in Dataverse. Nevertheless, with templates, you can create your own custom forms where you're asking users for more information, where you can create like you can see some templates for like requesting for holiday or travel request or reimbursement from business travel, and so on and so on. And for that purpose, you can simply create your own templates in Microsoft Teams, and then you can as well define whether these templates are available for a specific team or for the whole organization, or maybe just for the specific user. Right. And also in templates, what is cool, you can like define who should approve that task. So you can either put someone as a fixed value. So like for this specific approval template, there is always that specific person who is approving them, or you can leave that field empty so that user can define who they want to use as the approver for their task. All right. And now the most important or the most interesting part that I really like. So I'd like to go through those scenarios that I called advanced scenarios, because the point is that when you create a task in Power Automate, the only person that can complete it is the one who is assigned. So and also the one who can reassign it, or the one who can complete it, is always just the assignee, the current assignee. So there is like no out-of-box way that you can get or reassign any other, like any task in your organization, even if you're a Power Platform admin. Also, there is no way to cancel an approval if you are not the initiator of that approval process. So if you run the Power Automate, which has assigned the tasks, then only you are able to cancel that approval process. There are options to simply navigate to Dataverse and then open those specific tables in, for example, Excel, and then manipulate with the data. However, what is important, these operations are not going to resume the Power Automate, which is waiting for that approval process to be either completed or canceled. And now what I want to show you is how you can really create cool workflows, around approvals, or how actually working with Dataverse information can help you to complete any approval process on behalf of other users, or reassign any tasks to others if, for example, those specific employees are on a sick leave, for example, and those tasks are waiting for their response. Or even how you can create workflows which, even though are assigned to, for example, 10 employees, will be completed after 50% of approvals. So those scenarios can actually be done using Dataverse. Working directly with the Dataverse data. All right. So first, let's just get and understand the basics. So I'll just go through some specific scenarios around tasks and what is happening in Dataverse. So first, when a task is created, well, actually, the information is being stored in two tables. So first, there is an approval header written in approval table, where you need to put a new entry with information with values empty on the result. In result column, stage has to be set to basic, status to active, status reason pending. Plus, there is also information about the description, so the contents of the approval, the possible attachment, and as well the title for the approval and who has created it. So this information needs to be written to approval table to start the approval process. And also, as I mentioned, for every task that is being assigned or created during that approval process, you need to as well create a new entry in approval request table. And there again, you need to write information who is assigned, and as well set status to active, status reason to active, and owner must be set to assignee as mentioned. So this is the scenario when the task is created. Now, the second scenario is when a task is completed. And here, changes are actually being done in as well to tables. So first, in approval, what is written is that the result is set to the outcome. So if you're using the approve reject model, then the result is going to be either approve or reject. If you're using the custom model, so where you can define custom outcomes, then the result is unfortunately a concatenated string of every single outcome. So like if you have 5 assignees and, for example, have like and dislike as outcomes, then you can have like, semicolon, dislikes, semicolon, like, semicolon, like, semicolon, like, semicolon. So it will just put all the outcomes as the result. And then you need to just build your own logic in the workflow to somehow evaluate this result and, do something with that. Stage is set to complete, status to inactive, and status reason is completed. And also, as mentioned, for every task that is being completed through the approval process, you need to write an entry in the approval responses table, and then you need to put the response, the outcome selected from the task. Status of that entry is always inactive, and status reason is committed. Also, this is in that table, you need to write comments if the comments were provided. All right. So that was a scenario when the task is completed. Now, when the task is reassigned, what happens? Then in this scenario, the only change is being done in approval request. The original entry, so the original record behind the task is being changed to inactive, and the status reason is set to reassigned. And then there is a new entry created in the table with information reassigned from. That's the lookup to the original task, and reassigned from index is the GUID of that original task from which it was reassigned. And that's it. And lastly, one important thing about the reassigning tasks. So basically, when we are trying to reassign tasks from directly the user interface, so using the Power Automate action items, then you're not able to reassign a task to yourself, obviously. You are not allowed to reassign a task to the person who assigned the task to you. And you can't reassign tasks which are not assigned to you, obviously. So these are those three principles that you need to keep in mind when doing reassignments or when trying to mimic the reassignments working directly on Dataverse data. I mean, when working with Dataverse data, you can actually do whatever. I mean, you can reassign the task to whomever you want. There is no limitation. Although, if you just like to be fair to those principles, then you should just remember that those 3 points should be kept and enforced once doing any reassignments, even directly on Dataverse, just to keep all those situations clear. And then the last thing is what happens when a task is canceled. So this operation only updates records in the approval table. And once the approval process is canceled, then the record, the header information, its status, its result is being set to canceled, status complete, again, status to inactive, and status reason is set to canceled. So there are four scenarios, and this is what during these 4 scenarios is happening inside the Dataverse. All right, so I'll just switch to Dataverse, and just let me check if there were any comments so that I could maybe answer them. Right, maybe I'll just go through them later, as I don't have time to focus on them. All right, so let's go through the basics. I have here just a workflow, a simple flow, which is now set to simply assign a task and then wait after the task is assigned. So let's just maybe update information. And here as well, just change it. Oops. Right, now once I hit to test that workflow, you'll see that it will generate 3 tasks. So, and then it will be waiting for these 3 employees to actually approve their tasks or for the first rejection. And then let me show you maybe manually. And then let me show you what will happen inside Dataverse. Okay. And run. So now once I navigate first to the approval table, it is here. And inside that table to data, and then to all columns, I can now look for, right, automation summit. So there is that record that has just been created for this specific for this specific test. So here you can see that its model type is await all approval model. There is also basic approval model, which is simply waiting for the first response. And there is like action approval model and action await all, await all action approval model. So there are 4 different approval model types. And then depending on them, if you would like to create like your own custom solution that is working on the tasks, you need to as well take this model into consideration, because those models actually determine whether the workflow should wait for all responses, or the first rejection, or for the first approval, or just for the first response, and whatever. Now, here the important information is that it just have all this information set as I mentioned. No result yet, because it is still pending. However, it already has its GUID. So what I can do is to simply copy that GUID, and then what I could do is to go again to tables. And this time, just to show you, I will go to approval requests. So to approval requests, here they are. And then again to data. And now once I search for this GUID, there is nothing yet, or not on the first screen. There are like two records already. No, there's just one record. So there's the first one, and possibly others are going to be either lower or on the next screen. So it's always difficult to really find them all. Right. So now there are like 6. So like each row has 2 of these entries. Nevertheless, what I wanted to show you is that there are like already 3 of these entries. And for example, this one is assigned to Stefan Kowalski. And that is the only important information, or maybe as well what is important is what are the possible outcomes. So between which results the user can actually choose when they're completing their task. And well, that's it about the flow requests. There is nothing yet in our responses, obviously, because nothing was created. Although, if I go now to the flow approval, so that the table that I told you I underestimated, so that one here, and here to data. Right, again, there is nothing here. Maybe it will be on a second page. Nope. Maybe third. So maybe something from today. Today we have 3/2/2020. Maybe it should be the other way around, like 2/3. Okay. So there is that workflow that I have just assigned moments ago, that entry, and well, it's waiting still for an approval. So as you can see, that's the entry. And what I mentioned is that it contains this very important information, which is the flow notification URI. And that flow notification URI is like nothing different to what maybe you already know when you're creating workflows which are triggered through HTTP requests. So their structure is really the same. And so once this flow notification URI is once anything sends a post requested flow notification URI, then what you'll see is that actually the workflow is magically resumed. And what is also important is that whatever you pass inside the request body sent to that flow notification URI is just being sent directly to that workflow. So now what I can do is to like trigger Postman, and I hope I have that request somewhere stored already. Once it's loading, I'll just copy it. So the goal is that this flow notification URI is the most powerful thing I just discovered recently around approvals. And I hope that you'll find it really useful as well. Right. Postman interface is loading. So at the time, yes, Michal or Michael. The only thing that you have to do is to simply send a post request to that URI, and it will simply resume the workflow. So once I put it here and then set post, and in body, I would include whatever. I'm not very creative today. And just let me show you the workflow itself. So the workflow is now waiting for approval, right? So send. Sorry, that is maybe this way. That is weird. It should be working. Oh, I know why. Because there is like a new line after the last letter. All right, so now send. All right, you see it was sent, status is successful, and the flow is resumed. And then once I navigate to that action, I will see in a body the thing that I just have passed. So with that, I mean, it's like needless to say how many scenarios you can now work on. Now, let me show you some of them that I actually have in my mind. So I'll run that flow once again. And once again, I will go into the approvals table because I need to find the new request ID. So that one is possibly, one important thing is that once you just send the requested flow notification URI, nothing happens in Dataverse. So the approval itself is not being like completed or canceled or whatever. It only resumes the flow. So if you'd like to really create a business logic behind the approvals, then first you need to make all the changes in Dataverse, and then in the end, as a last action, you need to actually call that flow notification URI. And that is something I want to show you right now. So first, I need to find the new workflow, the new approval process. Maybe it's not yet here. Because, okay, it's running. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. Just one? Or is the other one? But that one is from 5:33, so possibly it's the one I have just triggered a moment ago. I hope it is. Oh, come on, copy. All right. So I have like 3 workflows which I can use to work with those workflows. So first, let's try with a cancellation. So like try to imagine you have a business critical workflow in your company, and well, the person who initiated the workflow is like on a sick leave or is not available, and the workflow is simply waiting or is taking too much time to execute, and you'd like to cancel it because well, for some reason you just don't need that instance to be running anymore. And you cannot do that on behalf of that employee because you don't have an access to their task. And furthermore, well, you can do that. You can't do that on Dataverse, but then you simply can't resume the flow, or you can resume, but through calling that flow notification URI. But still, it takes so much effort to do so that you simply can't do it, and then you need to wait. The workflow is stuck, and in the end, or eventually, it's timed out. So what you can do is to create a very simple flow that actually takes the flow approval ID as an input parameter. So that's the only parameter, maybe not the only, but the most important information in that workflow. And then what this workflow is doing in my case is simply gathering information about the approval details. So like the user who canceled the task is being queried from the users table. Then the approval details are being queried. The flow approval record is also being taken because we need to know the flow notification URI. And as well, in the end, the approval is being marked as canceled. So here, what is happening is are those changes that I mentioned during the presentation. So first, the approval stage key is being set to that approval ID with the complete annotation. The stage is marked complete, so the reason is marked as cancelled, and the result is as well set to cancelled. And as well, what is important is that the workflow is checking if there were any responses made to that in the approval process. If yes, or maybe not, in that case, it's not querying. No, sorry, it's not querying the responses. But what it's doing is preparing the response body or the request body that's being sent to flow notification URI, because if you navigate to the workflow where you have an approval action and you look what is the raw body that is received by that action, you can simply create your own request bodies that is being sent to that flow notification URI. And if that body schema is meeting the schema that the action is awaiting, then it will be simply parsed, and then you'll be able to use all those dynamic values as if the task was really completed or canceled in the way that is available through UI. So what I'm doing here is simply building this this proper schema or the proper body, and in the end, this body is being sent to that flow notification URI. So now, once I test it, you'll see that again the workflow here that is now running will be resumed, or the action is just being going to be cancelled, but the workflow is going to be resumed. Now, what is happening here? All right. So let me use myself as the one who is canceling the task. Come on. And now I'll run that flow. And so what has happened is that the task itself is now marked as cancelled. So if I go back to this table, I don't need to prove you that, all right? It's just taking too much time to find that entry. But you just need to trust me that this action actually updated the approval record, and it simply marked it as the cancelled. And in the end, what it as well does or did was to send that body with the information about the cancellation. And so here in my action, as you can see, it has been completed. So the workflow resumed, but I already have all this information as said parsed, because the request body I sent to flow notification URI was meeting the schema that the action was awaiting. So I have information about when it was completed, the outcome, the response summary, so like who canceled it, and so on. So this is the cool thing that we can actually do with these approvals. Now, what I will do for a moment is that I will open in a separate window my flow environment, but with a different account, with the journal researcher, as he's as well the one who is as well working with me. Oh, whoops, why? Hmm. That's a question, why it doesn't work? Just a moment. Oh my gosh. All right. Right. So I'll just do another thing. I'll just go here and sorry for this small disruption. Yeah, well, it was working just moments ago, but I need to reset it, I think. No idea why it's not working. Now, this is that I will do on a separate screen so that you don't know the password. Luckily, internet is really good, so it's just happening or taking just a small amount of time. Yeah, I wonder why it didn't work. All right, so let's try it again. Nope, nothing here. There. Right, John, let's try it again. All right. No idea what happened in between. So now what I want to do is actually, again, trigger this workflow so that it will again assign tasks to the 3 employees. But right now, what I would like to do is to go to the complete approval process. So I want to simply complete a workflow. So John Researcher now, so John Researcher is going to receive this approval request in his Power Automate portal in a moment. And in the meantime, I will as well go and again try to find the new record for the new approval process. All right. Nope, it's definitely not this one. It's 26. That one should be 40 something. Okay, so this is the one, 40. Yeah, that sounds legit. So we have the request. And this workflow is running. So John Researcher here has already have this task assigned. So John will simply say approve to his one, to the task that he has created. And complete his task. And in the meantime, I'll go here to that workflow, which is used for completion. So it is only completing the approval process without actually creating any additional approval responses. So again, what it's doing is getting all the assigned tasks which are created. It's as well getting all the responses for current approval. And then it is building this approval response the request body for the flow notification URI. based on all the responses that were made so far. So in my case, there will be just one response made by journal researcher, but the flow itself is going to be completed with, for example, the approve outcome. And in the end, the approval process is going to be marked as approved. In my case, the outcome is going to be the one that is passed as the as the parameters, as the input parameters for this workflow. Okay, so again, I'll start it. And hopefully this is the workflow that was used to assign. But there is, oh, that one is 44. So I think this is the one that is even more possible. Come on. All right. 44 is more possible. Is more well, legit. So, approval, and let's say approve in that case, and then let's run that flow. So in this scenario, again, what is going to happen is that the workflow here is now completed. In the responses, I see that there was one response from journal researcher. In the responses, so where you have like all the details from the responses, I see as well that journal researcher wrote comments. So all fine, I like it. Plus the approval process itself has been completed. The weighting is completed. The outcome is approved. So that was the second scenario. And also what you could do, like following these those operations, is to, for example, create a logic that helps you to complete an approval based on number of responses. So I have, for example, here, I don't have enough time to actually complete it or to showcase it to you. Now, I have just a table which is used to store information about how many responses for a specific approval is needed to consider the approval as completed. So what I need to simply provide is this flow ID, so the GUID from approval, and then the number of approvals that has to be reached so that the workflow can be resumed. And then I have a Cloudflow that is simply waiting or is being triggered every time. Right, this is the one. Every time there is a new approval response written to approval responses table, and then trust me, it's working. Come on. And then it is simply checking if the number of the responses that were already made, right, is higher than the number, this percentage of responses that is that the flow should wait for. So in that case, if this number is simply greater or equal to that approval limit, then the workflow is being resumed. Here again, workflow is just gathering all the responses that have been saved so far, and in the end is as well sending this request to approval notification URI. So that is that's simple. And then last thing I would like to show you, still I have some time, I will just again resubmit that flow. It's not the cancellation, it's not the reassignment, because the reassignment workflow is really simple. So here you simply need to provide information about, again, the approval request and to whom the workflow and to whom or whose task you would like to reassign. So an email of the user who is currently assigned a task. Come on, just load. Right, so like three information: to whom it is assigned, to whom it should be reassigned. Sorry, you can do it the way I did it or the way I was talking about. So here you need to provide the approval ID and the approval request ID. So the record ID of that single task that has been written to approval request table. And then what the workflow is doing is simply creating a new approval record in the approval request, the way that is following all these, let's say, information I showed you in the presentation, and then is updating that existing workflow approval record as complete and reassigned and inactive, right? So this tree information is being set. And this action does not require any flow notification URI calls because that thing is working like out of box. So simply you can create new entry, set alt entry as inactive, and that actually does the trick. So you don't have to make anything else. However, what I wanted to show you is that I have made some time ago my small application about the tasks management that helps me to work with tasks in any environment. And what it does, it simply displays all the information about the approval processes that are running in the environment. Oh, I made a mistake in that simple word and you didn't tell me, or whatever. So anyway, the application allows me to perform all those operations I was talking about, although it is as well following all the principles and is keeping track on how many responses were made, if this is the rejection made in the approve reject model type, if this is a custom outcome, and so on. So for example, I can cancel a task if I want to, and this is that simple. So now the task is canceled. Hopefully it will as well resume the workflow here. Or it might not, because I might have forgotten to put the request for notification URI. Sorry. So anyways, that scenario is somehow not being supported. I think I need to make a small update to application because it just made the approval task as canceled, but it didn't actually resume the flow. So let's try it again. This time with a different scenario. So as you remember, this automation submit test is waiting for all responses, right? But I can, for example, reassign this task from Stefan Kowalski. Can't I? Oh, I can't because the flow here is disallowing me to make reassignments. So that's again an important thing. You have those two flags. Enable notifications and enable reassignments. And then because I have this flag set to no, therefore my application is as well disallowing me to reassign. So I can just approve or reject. Nevertheless, I can say and simply complete his task. So this will simply make a new entry in approval responses. But because the workflow is waiting for all the responses, therefore it is not being resumed at that moment, right? It is still waiting. However, if, for example, here, I would say now, and simply say reject, then again, following all these information I showed you, and how the approval data is happening, is being changed in Dataverse for every specific scenario around approvals, then application is as well able to simply follow these steps, and then it is rejecting the whole, or like creating new rejection entry, and is marking all these workflow as completed and rejected. Now, this, information should be refreshed as well. So right now, the workflow is marked as rejected, and it is now resumed, right? Because the first rejection rejects in this approval model. And here again, I have all the information about who was approving, what were the outcomes. So then again, in responses, I see all those single responses and their comments, and everything is actually done as the way as you would expect it from if you were just working directly through the UI. However, what is like the benefit of working directly with Dataverse is that I I was actually able to work and to do those operations on behalf of any user that I have in that environment. Obviously, you can create your own permissions and so on, so that it wouldn't be possible to simply approve on behalf of anyone. Or at least if I was approving on behalf, for example, of Stefan Kowalski, then it will be recorded somewhere that it was approved by me on behalf of Stefan. So for auditing purposes, it is all clear and transparent. However, this is just a simple application like a POC more. So it is just to used to inspire you and to show you what cool things we can actually do when working directly with Dataverse and approvals data. All right. So, right, you can approve. All right. So that is all from my side. So if you have any questions, it's now the right moment to either unmute yourself or I'll try to go through them. You can go and, as I said in the beginning, to my YouTube channel. So there you can find even more information about these how approvals data and how it is working in Dataverse and how you can work with that data in Dataverse and so on. Right. Right. So where are the questions? Where is the beginning of the question?
Yes, where do we begin?
Right, I'm just trying to scroll up.
Lots of great feedback.
Thank you. So I think the first question was from Mary, how to work around the 30 days limitation in approvals. Well, basically, there are multiple templates on the internet, how you can do that. What you could do as well, like one of the let's say workarounds that I'm using is to, again, work directly on Dataverse so that you simply create an approval in one workflow, but that workflow is not waiting for the approval. Then you have another workflow which is being triggered every time there is an approval response written to approval responses, and is simply checking if the approval response, if the approval header related to that approval response is already set as completed, and then it is calling like another workflow, which is then handling all the rest of the logic, the business logic. What you could do as well is to, for example, store information, for example, on SharePoint around that approval, and then to have a child flow, which is waiting for the approval, and then that action that is waiting in a child flow has a custom timeout set to like 29 days, and then after 29 days, it is updating that record on SharePoint, which is triggering the same child flow again. So it is like waiting again for the same response, and it will be being like re-triggered after again 29 days until that task that approval process is completed. But there are like possibly even more patterns that you can find on the internet. But this is just feasible. So now the next question is, last time I tested the approval, it isn't multi-turn. You get to reject once and no chance to approve. Right. So this is what I said. If you choose to have the approve reject outcomes, then after the first rejection, it will not allow others to respond to that task. All right. I will go through other questions on the chat now because it's 5 p.m. already. So it's time for the next speaker, and I don't want to take their times. So thank you very much for spending the last hour with me. And as I said, if you have any questions, just reach me out to my blog or Twitter. And I highly encourage you to follow me on YouTube, where you can find all the information I was talking about today. So thank you once again, and have a wonderful rest of the conference.
Thank you there, Thomas. And if you can remember to share your links to your contact details in the chat, such as your blog and your social media, that would be really helpful.
Sure. Hi, Auntie. Good luck.
Hey, man. Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you. Awesome. And again, thank you, Thomas, and welcome.